Hello, Scorpio, and welcome to your 2017 Involution reading from Planet Waves. The revolution is within. I'm here to tell you a little bit about where this revolution is happening within you. And first, I want to start with some of its basic effects. One thing that's going on that all of your astrology kind of totals up to is your attractiveness. It is your whole chart right now is a study in your charm and your charisma. And charisma is not merely an abstract concept. Charisma is literally a kind of a quality that you have where people want to be physically near to you. They want to be around you and spend time with you. This is what is going on. And it can work on the level of groups, and it can also work on just watching Jonah try to that face. It can work on the level of groups, and it works on the level of individuals, and both are clearly illustrated in your chart right now. And if you're not feeling this, well, we'll come to that. We'll work on that. But let's see. Let's just get a kind of a quick roundel of the chart on this particular theme of charisma. I see it really coming from three places mainly, and I want to talk about, then given all this extra power of a racehorse, where you might stumble over it and how you cannot stumble over it. So here we go. First of all, the first thing in your chart that I've only mentioned rarely, and I'm not an adherent to these particular points, but there are 8 planets that are out of one group of fake planets. They're hypotheticals. They only exist in mathematics and minds of astrologers and in the charts of astrologers. And you've got one called Apollon, which has just entered Scorpio. It moves very slowly. It takes something like 570 years to go around the zodiac. It is, since it's a theoretical planet, it travels in a perfect circle rather than needing to be an ellipse and all those little details. But in any event, this super slow moving point, slower than any point conventionally used by astrologers, including Eris. It's slower moving than Eris, believe it or not, which is pretty darn slow, is Apollon. It's a kind of a super Jupiter with qualities of Mercury and the Sun, and it is the earliest thing in your sign. It is the thing in your sign. There's not any major planets going through Scorpio. There's not a Mars retrograde this year, and so I looked to a second tier of planets to get a clue what's going on, and I had my aha moment. Apollon, and that's about gathering groups. It's also about salesmanship. It's also about the ability to convince people and make things happen. And you've got that charm working for you right now. The second thing going on is in the chart here. The basis chart that I'm working with is the summer solstice. So that's the sun early in the sign Cancer. Then we'll get to the eclipse from August in a second. Is that in the solstice chart you have Venus and the Moon in Taurus, and this too illustrates an attractive quality, and it describes some of who you might attract. You're going for the sensuous, earthy type rather than the powerful, intellectual type. Someone with if we're talking about a man, balanced masculine and feminine qualities. If we're talking about a woman, someone who balances the qualities of lover and mother. Is not, neither one dominates. So those are two important things to have in women. Is elements of both of those qualities, which then can hybridize into something else. So we've got Apollon here describing you, kind of a significator for you, recently introduced into your sign. Opposite in your relationship house, Moon, Venus, that translates to people. Now, there's another element of this charisma factor, and this is a really interesting one, I think. One of the ways the solar chart works, and by the way, we know this is your solar chart because you're the position on the left, that's the east, so the chart begins here at house 1. So when we begin the story in Scorpio, that's the Scorpio chart. And when we come around There's Mr. Apollon. There's Urania. That's about astrology and science. When we come around, we'll skip over the second, third house. Come to the fifth house, Pisces. The fifth house is a very important house for your attractiveness. Basically, it is the sexual house that says, "Come play with me." It's not the "come marry me." It's not the "I want to be your parent." Come, I'll be your substitute mom or your substitute dad. It's not the chart of your house of your uncle. It's the house of playmates. It's the house of artists and gamblers and other risk takers of various kinds. And in terms of physical locations, it's represented by places like art studios, where the art is actually made, not where the art is actually shown. Those places that look like they're very church-like and they're pristine. There's not a speck of dust on the floor and there's 12-foot ceilings. That's the art gallery. The art studio is a messier, more fun place to hang out. You can get paint on the floor and there's a couch and the couch is covered with paint and you can have sex on the couch. That's the fifth house. And if we look at what's going on in the fifth, I'm going to add a planet here, actually. I'm going to add Borsisi, since we're talking about the fifth. For slow-moving points, Ness is going to be in your sign forever and 6 Sundays. Neptune is going to be in your sign at least another 10 years. Borsisi in your sign another probably 10 years. Chiron leaves next year, but Chiron's been there. Still 4 well-established, slow-moving planets. Borsisi being the 4th, and that's got a bit of a spiritual spin, which we're going to come back to when I talk about why, for you, the sex is in the process of being spiritualized, tantrified, you might say. So, 3 crucial houses. 1, Apollon, drawing people toward you. 2, 7th house, showing that there's already people there who are interested. Moon and Venus representing them. They can represent men or women. And then the 5th house here showing that you have a healing process brewing. You have a sexual and creative healing process that is fermenting, like a vat of beer mash or whatever they make fermented stuff out of. A bunch of barley mash that's about to become bourbon or something like that. Corn, that's rye. Wait, no, that's rye. So when you get the thing fermenting, there's something going on. This is a 5th house that is fermenting. And it is not, therefore, the usual fun and games quality of the 5th house. It is the art for the sake of growth, learning, healing, and making progress with your life. And that has a way of drawing people in. The thing is that it can have a way of drawing people in deeper than they thought they could go or wanted to go, and then you might get drawn in deeper than you were expecting to go in something that seemed like it was going to be fun, and then suddenly you find yourself kind of drawn in, in a kind of undertow, pulled in, and then you're kind of in this situation. So you want to be mindful of that, and that means being mindful of who you're with and how far you go with who you're with, appropriate to who they are. This is not to say be hyper cautious and reject everyone, but rather treat your encounters as a kind of ongoing experiment and see who comes into your experience and how they respond. I recognize this is different than the kind of contemporary thing of either hook up once and not know the person's name or get married slightly before the first date. We're talking about another option. We're talking about a kind of a psychic region of creative experimentation. But the thing about that psychic region of creative experimentation is it is focused on a healing process, and that healing process will be accessed mainly through 2 ways, and quite possibly an overlap of those 2 ways. One is through the experimental form of sex, and the second is through that kind of sexy form of art where you're doing things and it's really daring, and it's 4 o'clock on Sunday morning, and you light another joint and you're in your room, and you dug all your paints out of the closet, and you're naked painting in your room, and it's 4:00 on Sunday morning, and then suddenly it's 5:30 and the sun is coming up, and your dream life and your reality life are morphed into one thing. Maybe that's that's my porno fantasy, and you're getting the paint everywhere. That's the feeling of the fifth house in Pisces, and you're doing this in this hypothetical, art painting studio porn concept that I've got. You're doing it because you're transforming yourself. You're doing it because every time you touch the brush to the canvas, or every time you whack the chisel and chunk another piece of rock off or sketch, you're writing in your own soul. You're discovering yourself. You are moving deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into your reality. This is the healing self-awareness piece that's accessed through creativity and creativity, art, and sex. And so if this is about the sex facet of things, there has to be an overall creative ethos to the sex rather than a like matrimonial ethos to the sex. I mean, we all know the difference. We all know the difference. There's a little bit more of a sense of daring with the fifth house type of sex, and a little bit more of it's an experiment, and that it's an experiment. And the reason the experiment is so important is because what you're experimenting with is who you are. Now, the healing element comes up yet again for you in this placement here. It's written in pencil, this planet, and barely ever heard about 1992 QB1. You want to learn about it? Go to 1992QB1.com. My article about QB1, extensive article about the discovery of QB1 is there. QB1 was the first planet discovered beyond Pluto in our solar system, right? Astronomers had speculated and predicted and counter-predicted that there were planets beyond Pluto. Finally, one showed up, and that was 1992, called 1992 QB1. And this is important in your life for two reasons. First of all, the concept exists. Scorpio is in modern astrology, most astrologers feel it's ruled by Pluto. And Pluto has that kind of gun to your head, grow or die kind of feeling. QB1 takes a more, let's say, gentle approach. And the approach of QB1 is, okay, here's your opportunity to grow. Here is what you seem to be calling for. Here is what you seem to need. Here is what you are both interested in and need. And it's about, therefore, crossing thresholds in a gentler way. It's about growth that is not, as Patrick Walker used to say, enforced growth. There's a voluntary quality to it. You can take your time with it, and it influences one's values about orgasm, one's values about death, and one's values about birth. So the thresholder, who is QB1, is someone who ushers people across major life thresholds, including turning points in life. So, for example, if I'm your astrologer and I'm helping you through your Chiron return, then I am a thresholder, basically helping you across that threshold. I've done this a lot of times with eclipses also. There's an eclipse happening, and I end up in a public role of initiating people into what it means to cross the threshold of that eclipse. Lots of people can serve as thresholders, but they tend to deal with the deepest existential material in life. Now, this is showing up in your seventh house in relationships. You are seeking this archetype of a person. You're not just looking for people to like wine and dine with. You're on some level seeking people who will facilitate the experiment of your transition into a new experience of life. Who will facilitate your becoming the next version of who you are. And so there's going to be a mutual attractiveness there. So all of this spells a lot of charisma, which is based on who you are and what you are. It's based on this fermenting, healing dimension of sexuality. And then it's also based on just the mere fact that, your people want to be around you. Venus and the moon in the seventh house, and QB1. So you're drawing all kinds of people in. Now, this, taking it even a step further, represents to me a whole new approach to relationships and a whole new approach to sexuality. We should concede right away that Scorpio is one of the most important archetypes of sexuality in the zodiac. This is concentrated in a few signs, but the Scorpio-Taurus aspect is one of the places, and there is a special feeling to sex with Scorpio, which is a little like the feeling of having sex for the first time every time someone has sex with you. Remember that you have this initiatory power, and that there's something about you, this would include Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising, which can call forth a totally new experience every time someone has an encounter with you. Every time. And remember that. And this is part of your draw. This is part of your charm. This is part of why people kind of get stuck on you, even if they might react in a negative way to being stuck on you. That is to say, the depth that you offer scares them in some way, and there's not that much you can do about that except to be really comfortable with yourself. And that looks like something that's actually happening. This combination of factors, this combination of Apollon, and then add all this fifth house where you have to explore and express and unravel and experiment with your sexuality and your creativity, and then the fact that you will actually have people there. But there's another factor. When we look at the chart for the solstice, which again is the basis chart for this, it kind of splits the difference between now and the eclipse, a little bit ahead of the eclipse, a month from now. But in any event, it's a major turning point of the year. And the most interesting thing from a conventional classical planet standpoint in this chart is that Mercury is in the last degree of Gemini, and the Sun is in the first degree of Cancer. And Gemini is the ruler of your eighth house. This is the house of negotiation. It is the house of shared resources, dowry, inheritance, legacy, and sex. And you have Gemini here. There's a couple of things that says, one of which is you must be conversant about sexuality. You must lift your veil of secrecy and forget hiding things from people, and instead be the person who gets the conversation going. Additionally, with Mercury in Gemini in the last degree, that is an image of you about to change your mind about something. And the thing that you're about to change your mind about is that sex is not merely a mundane thing. This whole dimension of human interrelation, where people join together and create a third thing, whether that's a psychic entity or a baby or some form of relationship or some form of art that they create, whatever that thing that is created in relationship is, because all relationships are procreative. They don't have to make babies to be procreative. Sex multiplies karma. Relating to people multiplies karma. The question is, what karma are you multiplying? And you need to know that. And you're becoming aware of the karma that you are multiplying, churning up, as it were. And you're on the verge of figuring out. Mercury's going to follow the sun in a few hours later. You're on the verge of figuring out that there is something that you, A, were missing, and then B, can discover and are very likely to discover. And that is about the inherently spiritual nature of relationships. They may be the only spiritual thing there is our relationships, and it's essential that we understand the process of projection and introjection, and the way in which we strive to be like other people, the way in which they strive to be like us, and the way in which we kind of exchange tendencies and multiply and grow using this potent mirror of relationship. So that's happening. Now let's take up one of the two central places that I'm talking about when I suggest this revolution thing. You have a lot about to happen in your relationship life, because next year, Uranus here in green enters Taurus. And it's going to be a process that takes about a year before it enters Taurus permanently. But next spring, it will touch Taurus, therefore your seventh house, for the first time. And this is an indicator that in terms of your relationships, everything is about to change quite radically, and you're entering a whole new phase of your relationships that at minimum could be described as unconventional. And so if you're in what you would describe as a conventional relationship, the time is now to start opening the door to conversations about what you want on a deeper level, and also, very important, because a lot of this is going to come in through partners, to ask your partner what he or she wants on a deeper level and get an honest conversation going. When I was at Burning Man in, I'm not sure which one, I've been to two. It was either 01 or 09. They were my two jaunts out to Black Rock City. I think it was 09. There was an older couple there. Maybe they were around 70 years old, and they said that they were polyamorous activists, which is fun to meet people who were like 70 who were polyamorous activists, and they were married. And of course, everyone asked them the same story. How did this come to be? Well, they said we were married for like 40 years, and then we both admitted to each other that we were both polyamorous. Did they have to wait 40 years? No. Is the story kind of perfect the way it is? Sure. But I would suggest that for you, that you actually find out, the light adjusts better when I've got some little white in the frame, to find out where your partner is really coming from with regards to relationship, and tell your partner where you're really coming from regarding your desire for relationship, because there is this major explosion happening in your sixth house, but the sixth house is kind of like time release, and then Uranus is going to come into the seventh, and it's going to be one revelation after the next, and all kinds of really interesting, weird people who you're going to be glad that you get to meet them, because they're going to change your life in some interesting ways and set examples for you that you were just simply not expecting that it was possible for someone to set an example like this. Now, a lot of this has to do with ideas, right? This is my little crazy, creepy version of Pluto here. I didn't mean to quite draw it. It looks like a little kitty cat version of Pluto with Juno, both retrograde. So the planet representing conventional relationships is currently conjunct Pluto, undergoing its own radical transformation merely by that conjunction. And in your house, in your third house, Capricorn, this is about getting out of your head, out of your theory, and out of your expectations, and particularly out of your parents' expectations for you. One of the things that Capricorn represents is one's parents' expectations. And Pluto in Capricorn represents detonating your parents' expectations and finally setting yourself free. Most people, I can tell you from gosh darn long 22 years of doing readings, from which I'm taking a break and doing more things like this, is that people have no idea the extent to which their lives are run by their parents. Particularly women's lives run by their mothers. Guys are more willing to just say, fuck you, I'm doing my own thing. Women have a much harder time with this. There's a much thicker Kevlar apron spring connected from mothers to daughters, and this is used by mothers to manipulate their daughters. If you are a mom, the best thing you can do for your daughter is set your daughter free. Make sure she's got your phone number, which she'll always have. Tell her she can call you if she needs you, and encourage her to live her life her way, not her life your way or your life. And correspondingly, your mom may still be, whether she's living or not living, trying to get you to live your life her way or live her life vicariously through you. You need to have a revolt here. And this revolt is going to stretch across to the Uranus-Eris conjunction. And essentially, what I'm seeing here is a lot of new ideas about everything. New ideas about what it means to work, what it means to love, what it means to be creative, what it means to think, what it means to speak and write. And if you remember your charisma, your attractive charms that are biological, people coming near you, it'll be easier. One last bit. Let's check in with the total solar eclipse. Total solar eclipse takes place in your 10th house. One interesting thing about your 10th is that a minor planet called Varuna, Pluto-like, approximately 300-year orbit, I think 290, has arrived there, and this is giving you a leg up in career stuff. You have what many of the people at the top of your profession have, whatever profession that is. And Varuna tends to level the playing field. Additionally, there's going to be this opening of the total solar eclipse in your 10th house. But as you can see, it happens late in your 10th house, and it's close to Virgo, which is your 11th house, which you might think of the 11th house as your house of public acceptance. You might think of it as the house where you either get to be the flavor of the month or not. And there is a mental block here in terms of how you perceive your public, whatever that is, circle of friends, your client base, whatever that might be. And that mental block is illustrated by trans-Pluto, another one of these hypotheticals, but it's from a different set of hypotheticals. The eclipse is going to push the barrier between your reputation and how you are received. As with all things involving this trans-Pluto point showing up in Virgo, wherever it shows up for people, the counsel is you must keep an open mind. And the open mind to keep with trans-Pluto is the open, in Virgo, and the 11th is the open mind of what people think about you. You are likely to have a much harsher self-image than people have of you. You may just think, well, I'm boring, nobody likes me, and this, that, and the other. And the reality is you're venerated. You're respected, and you're looked up to. And what you have to get out of is the habit of expecting people not to approve of you, of expecting people not to like you, and expecting that they're judging the scuff on your boot, when the chances are, if the conversation went on for 6 months, they would never see the scuff on your boot. You've got to withdraw those projections and allow yourself to be either the attractive type, which could be here and here, the like deeply fermenting vat of barley sexual type, turning yourself into whatever they make out of barley. I keep forgetting. I don't really drink much of that barley stuff. Or the regal type, because you have, one of the most important signs for Scorpio from which you draw attributes. I mean, look, we're using a whole chart for Scorpio, right? We're not telling the Scorpio story just looking at one little wedge, right? The entire chart is in the scenario, and you draw energy mostly from this angle, and this, and this. So like half the power of Scorpio is being drawn off of the fixed cross, and the fixed cross has Leo prominently, and Leo is regal and beautiful, and Leo is the person whose messed up hair is more beautiful than their perfectly done hair, right? So just think of that as a metaphor, that kind of that like natural look, and you throw some water on it, or you just put whatever, tie it up in a bun or whatever. Take that as a life metaphor, that the naturally wild version of you is likely to be the one that is the most compelling to us. All right. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to tune into your rising sign. You need to look that up. Most of you have acquired all 12 signs. I strongly suggest at least you're listening to your sun and your rising sign, because between those two, you'll be able to kind of, between you, one reading, and the other reading, triangulate some fresh, original ideas and like bounce the sparks off each other and get some fresh elements. Remember, you can share these readings with significant others. Tell them I said hi, or I'll just say hi on my own. All right. Thank you for being a friend of and patron of and taking advantage of the work that I do and of Planet Waves. Okay. Mouse.